Hello everyone, I want to continue to talk about solving equations with radicals. This time we have two square roots in the equation. And so following the same idea from my previous video, we are going to first try to isolate one of the radicals. And it doesn't matter which one that we are going to isolate. So I'm just going to pick the first one, okay, and then I'm going to move the second one to the other side of the equation. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we are going to add this radical of x minus 2 to the right side of the equation. So now those two will get canceled, and then we are going to be left with just this first radical on the left side of the equation. So we get the square root of 2x minus 3, and then that becomes 0. Okay, and then we have what? 1 plus this radical, so it becomes 1 plus the square root of x minus 2. Actually, we cannot really do too much at this point. So now we really just have this equation. Now let me bring this over so that it looks better. So 2x minus 3. Okay, so now our equation looks like this. And then because we isolated the first radical, so we are going to square both sides. And then you may say, what about this one? This one is okay. We are still going to have to square the two sides of the equation a second time. But right now, let's just get rid of this first radical here. So when we do the squaring, make sure that we square the whole thing. So if there are two terms right here, one is one term, the second radical is the second term, and then we need to put parentheses around the whole expression and then square it. Okay, so now when we do that, then the square and the square root, they cancel out. So we get 2x minus 3. So whatever that's left inside the radical. And then this one we have you can think of that as a binomial. So we are going to use we call a formula over here. So if we have a plus b quantity square, then we are going to get a squared plus 2ab and then plus b squared. Okay, so it's not really distributing the square to the a and the b because we have an addition inside the parentheses. So we will have this. You can actually just verify by writing a plus b times a plus b and then follow that. Okay, so now this one looks like a plus b squared. And which one is which? The a is just like the 1, okay, so a is the 1, and then b is our radical over here, so the square root of x minus 2. Okay, so now let's do the squaring here. Okay, so we are going to get a square is just 1 square, so we're going to get 1, okay, and then plus. Now this one is a little bit tricky because we have 2 times a times b, right? And then we may need to simplify after that. So let's just write it down without simplifying it. So we have plus 2 and then times a is what? A is 1. And then b is this radical here. So we get square root of x minus 2. So that's 2ab and then plus b squared. B squared is this thing squared, so I'm just going to write it down without simplifying. So the square root of x minus 2, that is our b here, and then the square, so we have the square. So let's do a little bit of cleaning up on the right side. So we get 2x minus 3 is equal to 1 plus, okay, so 2 times 1 is just 2, right? And then times the square root. So 2 times the square root of x minus 2. And then this one, the square and the square root, they cancel out. So we are just going to get x minus 2. Okay, so far so good. Now as you can see that after we do the squaring, even though we are still getting a square root in the equation, but we only have 1 square root left. Before, from the original equation, we actually had 2 square roots. So we actually improved the situation about solving this equation. We actually make it easier to solve now. But of course, we still need to do the squaring one more time. Okay, before that, we need to isolate this radical. So that means we need to move all the other stuff without the radical to the other side of the equation. Okay, so let's try that. We can combine the stuff together first. We have 1 minus 2, so we get either 1. So we have 2x minus 3. And then let's put the radical first. So 2 times x minus 2. And then we have just the x. Then 1 minus 2, as I said, becomes minus 1. Okay, so now we're going to start moving stuff around. So we are going to subtract both sides, x from both sides. And then we are going to add the 1 to both sides. Okay, so those will get cancelled because we are isolating this radical. So it becomes 2x minus x, so we get x, negative 3 plus 1, so we get negative 2. And then we are going to get equals 2 times the square root of x minus 2. Okay, so now the radical is isolated, and then you may say, but there is a 2. You can divide both sides by 2, but then you have to deal with the fractions. When we say isolate the radical, we are actually referring to when we are not having the radical adding or subtracting anything, but if we have a multiplication here, that's okay. Okay, so we can just leave the 2 here so that we don't need to deal with the fractions. So now we are going to do the second time the squaring. So just like before, we are going to square the whole thing. Okay, so now let's just write down the formula again. So we are going to, well, this one is a little bit different because of the minus sign in the middle. So it will be a minus b quantity square is equal to a square minus 2ab and then plus b square. Okay, and so as you can see that the a is the x here, a is the x, and the minus 2, so 2 is, b is the 2. So if we are expanding this, then we are going to get a squared, which is x squared, so we get x squared, okay, minus 2 times a times b, so we are going to have the x over here, the 2 over here. Now let's simplify over here so that we don't need to write more steps. So we have negative 2 times 2, we get negative 4, and then times x, so we get negative 4x. And then the b square. What is the b square? B is 2, so b square is 4, so we get plus 4. Okay, because of the plus over here. And then now what about this one? This one, we can distribute the square to the 2 and then the radical. And so 2 squared, we are going to get 4. And then the square and the square root, they cancel each other out. So we are going to get x minus 2. But this is not correct because we have 2 terms inside the radical. So once we clear the radical, we still need to have parentheses over here just to avoid having the error. If we just put 4x minus 2, then it will just be 4 times the x, but not 4 times the negative 2. But as you can see here, it should be 4 times the negative 2. Okay, so now let's clean up the expression over here. So we have x squared minus 4x, and then plus 4 is equal to 4x minus 8. And then we can move everything to one side of the equation because that's a quadratic term here. So that means we're going to get a quadratic equation. So we get minus 4x, and then we have minus 4x. So subtract 4x from both sides, and then we get at 8. So now continuing from there, so those are gone. So we are going to get 0 on this side. So we have x squared minus 8x, and then plus 12 is equal to 0. Okay, so moving on, we have the quadratic equation. We can use a quadratic formula or we can try to factor it. This one is actually factorable, so we can actually write it as, let's just put it on the side. So we have 1x times 1x. 1x times 1x will give us 1x squared. And then the 12, we have different combinations. We can do 1 and 12. We can do 2 and 6. We can do 3 and 4. And it just happens that 2 and 6 seems to be the working combo here. Because why? Because we have the 8, right? We want 8. And so it looks like this pair will give us that. So we have 1x times 6. We are going to get, what is that? 6x. 1x times 2, we get 2x. What happens right now is that we want negative 8. So we want a negative sign in front of those. If we put negative signs over there, we also need to put negative signs over there. So negative 2x minus 6x, we are going to get negative 8x, which will give us this. And then also we need to double check, multiply those two and see if we are getting this number over here. So negative 2 times negative 6, what do we get? We get positive 12, so that works. This will work. And then how do we write down the factorization? It's 1x minus 2, so we get x minus 2. The other one, the second one, we are going to have 1x minus 6, so we get x minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, so we have x equals 2 or x equals 6 for the answers. Okay, we still need to check by plugging them back into the original equation. So what really happens is that we are going to do the checking over here. So we cannot really just say that, okay, so those are the solution. We need to do the checking. So the first one is when x is equal to 2. So let's do the checking over here. So when x is equal to 2, we can write down the equation. So it will be the square root of 2x minus 3. And then the square root of x minus 2. So we are going to do that. So we are going to have the left-hand side is equal to square root of 2x minus 3, and then minus the square root of x minus 2. Okay. And then what are we plugging in? We are plugging the 2 in there. So now we do the calculation. So we have 2 times 2 is 4, 4 minus 3 is 1, so we are going to get square root of 1 minus, this is 2 minus 2, so we get 0. So square root of 0, so we are going to get 1 minus 0, which is 1. And then the right-hand side is going to be just 1. Okay, so you can see that the right-hand side is 1. And you can see that they're equal. And actually, I'm going to just write it here. So that's equal to the right-hand side. And so that means this answer is good. And now we are going to check the second one. So we are going to have when x is equal to 6. And then we do the same thing here. So we have this. And then now this time we are going to plug in the 6. Then do the calculation. So we are going to have 2 times 6 is 12, minus 3 is 9, so we get square root of 9. Minus, this is what, 4, so square root of 4. So we're going to get 3 minus 2, which is also equal to 1. And that is also equal to the right-hand side. So this answer also works. So those are the 2 solutions to this equation. Okay, so that's it for this problem. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.